Welcome to Liner Notes. My name is David Bixler. What does it mean to embrace a new beginning? For Chicago alto saxophonist Lenard Simpson, it means answering the call of faith. Inspired by the prophet Isaiah's famous directive to forget the former things, do not dwell on the past, Simpson's 2024 release, New Beginnings, is a stirring, soulful journey with pianist Julius Tucker, bassist Runere Brooks, and drummer Samuel Jewell. This quartet masterfully blends the spiritual depth of the Black church experience with the soaring improvisation of modern jazz. Join us as we explore Lenard Simpson's musical testament. Lenard Simpson, welcome to Liner Notes. Good morning. Good to see you, bro. And really want to dive into your latest recording, New Beginnings, from 2024. And, just reading about the notes. It's based on scripture from the prophet Isaiah. Forget the former things, do not dwell on the past. And that seems to inform all you're doing. Great record. Listened to it a couple times now. And, just the thing that really struck me about it is just like an immense amount of joy that is in there. And, just really loved so much about the recording. When I have guests on, I like to listen to the music before I read about it. And, the record starts out with just screaming organ. Right, and I thought, "Wow, man, who's this piano player that's playing organ?"
Yeah,
And then I'm reading about it, and it's a gentleman by the name of Richard Gibbs who played with Aretha Franklin forever, and church organist, and so that was super cool. Anyhow, why don't you take us through a little bit of the process of the music, putting it together? And I'm curious. I actually, your band is killing. I don't know any of these cats. So, maybe tell about, where they're from, how you met them, and, your relationship and history with them.
yeah. So I'll start with the band. So I met Sam Jewell, who's playing drums. I met him probably when I was a freshman or sophomore in undergrad, and we met in passing there. He had played on somebody's recital, but then later when I graduated undergrad in Northern Illinois, he had called me and was like, "Hey, my guitar player broke his hand or did something to his hand. Could you sub for this gig?" And we began talking on there, and like immediately, I mean, the first time we played, it was like he was like, "Welcome to the band." We had immediate connection. And then I met Runere through that, who was playing bass. But also me and Runere met through this concert the Jazz Institute did when I was in undergrad, called like Generations in Jazz or something like that. And we happened to be in the same band. Um, and so we met through that. And then Julius, I met through playing with Charles Heath. When I first moved to Chicago, my first kind of gig was I was playing the regular jam sessions with Charles Heath, and Julius was playing piano in that. Then I also was hanging out with Julius at that same festival Jazz Institute did. But now myself, Rainier, and Sam, we all actually play at the same church. So
Okay,
it's
gotcha.
three of us that all play at the exact same church.
Cool. Did you know Richard? Did you just call him up, or is this someone that you know?
Well, they all play in the gospel scene, but Rainier plays. And when I wrote the song, I was like, I'm hearing organ, and this is, and I know exactly what I'm hearing. And then Rainier was like, I know exactly what you're hearing. I know the person for you. And he was like, man, I'm gonna get Richard Gibbs. I was like, man, can I afford Richard Gibbs? And I was like,
And he's in Chicago. He's in
he's in
Chicago.
Chicago. And I
Okay.
was like, dang, man. I was like, I can't afford Richard Gibbs. And I was like, I'm paying for the record, you know. And but yeah, he got Richard Gibbs. He was like, man, I got the person. And then Richard said yes. I was surprised he said yes to doing it, but he was, like, thrilled to do it. So
Cool.
Runere actually set that up.
Alright. And that's B3 he's
Yeah.
playing on the okay, and that was in the studio, or did you go to, like, his church or his house wherever he had his gear or
So we
something?
went to Clue Studios, which is, like, South Holland. There's this drummer that plays drums at this church in Chicago called Saint Sabina. But he's also a recording engineer, and we does all, like, people like Ricky Dillard, if you're familiar with him, a lot of those gospel records, and he had a organ at his house. So we actually tracked it separately. And that man, that thing was actually pretty incredible to watch. I was just talking about it the other day because he was like, the first part is like this very like, you know, strong entrance. I mean, it's like he did and he killed it, but then the second part has like all these kind of intricate hits. And I remember when he looked at the music, he was like, "I don't have to play the second part, do I?" And I was like, "No, no." I was like, "You're good."
You cool.
You're cool.
Uh,
But what was funny was like he played the first two and it was amazing. And I was like, "Richard, this is exactly." He's like, "Oh, this is what you want," and just knocks it out like not a single. You know, there is. It literally took him 30 minutes or less to do like 3 or 4
yeah.
takes.
It's pretty spectacular. I mean, like, it's a stunning way to start the recording, and then, it unfolds. So maybe talk about maybe your compositional process and, a lot of, biblical and church references in the titles, and maybe, are they programmatic? Are they references, or, what is the source of inspiration?
So sometimes I came up with the title first and but then sometimes I would actually meditate on the songs after I write them. And so sometimes I am thinking about something before I go and write, but sometimes I let the song kinda tell me what is it about. And I literally just meditate on the songs and listen and really listen to them when I'm titling sometimes. So I'll use "Goodbye," for example, which is the duo ballad right at the end. That one came the inspiration came, like, I woke up in the scripture, which is the one that you read, that scripture came to mind, and it was, like, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and I just went to the I don't have a piano, I just went to the MIDI keyboard, and I wrote it, and it literally took, like, 10 minutes. It was, like, done. Like, the melody, all the harmony was already in my head. Um, and then some of the other ones, like, all I use altar call. Altar call had many different reiterations. I had the first part and, I kept feeling like in my flesh, I was like, "Man, there needs to be something else. There needs to be this. There needs to be an intro or something." Um, and then, I let it kinda just sit for actually a couple years. I didn't play it at all. And then I played it at the showcase, and somebody told me somebody's like, "It sounds like people praying." That was the title they gave me. And then immediately when they said that, I was like, "Oh, this is an altar call. This is like the when the black church, when anybody needs prayer, they all come up on the front on the altar and they all pray together, corporate prayer." And so that's where that title came from. Um, yeah.
There's a crazy slow build to that one,
Yeah.
just like it's a super journey. And the other one that's like that, the one that really kind of struck me, John 3:16, which cornerstone of the Christian faith. It starts out like almost free-ish, and then, it takes the listener on a journey,
Yeah.
and, that was super cool. Does, you've performed this music a lot as a quartet, and, like, before you recorded it or after or both?
Before, so like a lot of this, most musicians are our biggest critic is ourselves. So I wrote this music actually kind of a while ago. Some stuff was newer. Like 316 was written, I think, February of 2021. And I remember because I was doing a residency at the Jazz Institute and we did a concert. And so I wanted to write a suite on love because it was on February 14th or around that time. And so that's where I wrote 316. So like some of the stuff was written before. And we actually recorded a lot of different music, but to me is like written before. And then we performed it at the showcase maybe like 2 or 3 weeks before we went in the studio. And then when we went to LA to record, we did a set. Played a set the night before. So at this point, we were like not looking at music. I mean, the band's been playing the music for 3 years and the music has really unfolded.
It sounded like there was a serious amount of comfort level, like, not only with the music, but between, the 4 of you, and it was really, really cool to hear. The other thing I was thinking of, like, in the, I don't know, 4 or 5 years that we've known each other, I hear you play, like, 1 solo a night,
Yeah.
in a big band,
You're right.
and, we all love big band, we love doing the thing, but, to hear you in your element is a, different thing, an immense amount of, like, creativity and nuance, and, like, one of the things I was thinking too, and, I hear this in, a lot of alto players of your generation, and you can correct me if I'm wrong or if, you wanna step away from this, but it seems like, um, Miguel Zenon has, kinda cast
Mhm.
a wide, net. That sounds kinda negative, but, like the influence, I mean, to me, would you say that's on, or, am I, missing something there?
No, I would say it's true. I one thing I love about this sounds might sound a little boasting, but one thing I love about me and I love about my favorite, but I love about my favorite alto players is not only do I hear them, but I hear people they've kind of taken from. And you're right, I've never transcribed Miguel, but I've listened to him so much. And to me, there's always something to take from somebody. And like, Miguel's soulful, but he has all this other stuff, the rhythmic stuff. His sound is beautiful. The nuances of his sound, the nuances of his articulation. I love him as a Miguel. So like, which funny is on that record, I'm like, I can hear my influences come out. It's like, crap, Kenny came out, or even a little Vincent Herring came out, and I'm like, people I haven't listened to since I first started. So I would say you're very right. You're very correct on that.
Alright. Yeah, no, I mean, I completely dug it, and, I'm a fan of his music also. Just like kinda like from my generation, especially like with Steve Wilson being here, like at that time, Kenny Garrett was, that was kind of like the standard bearer of alto sounds that influenced so many cats at that time, and it's kinda interesting to me to hear how, while, people are still checking out Kenny Garrett, how things evolve,
Yeah.
and, that's one of the beautiful things about this music for sure, man. When you're talking about, like, your beginnings and, like, who you transcribe, you mentioned, Vincent, I'm sure, like, Cannonball and Bird were there.
Mhm.
You're teaching now, at a school in Chicago, no?
Mhm.
Tell us about, Leonard Simpson, educator. What are you, like, what's important to you in your studio as you work with young saxophonists when you, like, look back at your time when you were coming up?
For me is a big thing is sound. I'm always like a big believer in sound because I think like that's half the battle. I mean, like I always tell myself if nobody likes any information I play, if they as long as they love my sound, that's all I really care about. But I've always wanted to be able to play with a lot of different people. And I might have not the wrong, but like a different philosophy of like improvising. Cause I think part of it on the teacher is like giving them the information and showing them information. But for me, like that's what was given to me was, I was already listening a bunch and those teachers guiding me, but it was also a lot of me like sitting down and letting my creative brain do the work of like, well, they gave me the paint. Now I figure out and they told me different techniques, but now I figure out how do I paint this painting. And so like for my students, I mean we work on sound, we work on technique and improvising, we do work on little things, but I do encourage them to like listen to and we transcribe, we break down things. I'm a big opponent of you transcribe, you take the little things out, you take licks out. But then what I've learned is a lot of kids have a hard time of they it's hard for them to regurgitate it. And partially I think one of the reason why it is because it's not information that's coming from you and you got to let it seep in. But when I think about me growing up, I would sit with the lick and I would figure out, oh, this is how I hear it. This is how I flip it around. This is how I use it. And to me, that's what has kind of informed the way I play is like all the stuff that I've kind of taken and kind of manipulated over the years. But the educator, I do focus on a lot of sound and I do focus on like, what if you do this? What if I take these three notes out of this bird solo rather than this whole 2-5-1 lick? What if I take these three notes and make my own little patterns, make my own shapes out of it? How would I do that? I was telling a student yesterday, actually, it's like you have these three things, but really they're about like seven. And at some point he did something, he's like, wait, I can do that? And I was like, yeah, you can. And and the thing in his brain was like, "Oh, well, what if I try this? Well, what if I try this?" And it's like, to me, those are the special things I think when it comes to improvising, because we're dealing with 12 notes. I mean, and so the creative part is like, how do I make a box this small feel like it's this big? And so that's kind of what I do focus on a lot of when I'm teaching.
You talk about, "I've been given the tools, I'm gonna paint." I think it's a pretty mature or sophisticated 16-year-old that can think that.
Yeah.
You find, like, even at the college age, you find your students are open to this? I mean, I guess you alluded to the fact that, this kid kinda had his mind blown thinking, "Wow, I could do
Yeah.
this." Is that do you find them having a hard time embracing that?
Yeah. Cause I think kids are naturally creative. And then somehow between like third and like high school, that gets destroyed. And then lose that creative ability, and creative thinking that I think somehow we ruin it. Because I see like really young kids play and they're just like, I teach at this camp and it's really incredible giving kids like 9-year-olds like two notes and they're just, like, destroying. I mean, they're playing, like, all this stuff, and they have no idea. It's just, like, there's just this curiosity, and then we put so much rules on everything to it kinda kills it. Um, and that honestly, I would say a big person who helped with that was, Kelly Sill. He had called me one day at a concert when I was an undergrad, and he said, "Leonard, I never" he's like, "Play like you're a 5-year-old." And I never knew what he meant for years. And and so then all of a sudden I was like, that's what he means. It's like you don't judge what you do. You don't judge what creativity part of it. You don't judge how people may think it sounds. You embrace it. A 5-year-old just jumps off the swing. They don't think like, man, I might break my legs. you know, but the and so honestly, I think, once you get a student embracing that, um, I think that's where the rest kind of takes care of herself. They're gonna figure out the theory. They're gonna figure out all that stuff you can figure out. But the stuff that you can't teach is that creative part of them that somebody has to help unlock.
Yeah. I mean, I have a theory that, so much emphasis is placed on reading, like in a band program.
Yeah.
Music becomes ink on a page rather than sound. And I've often thought that's where, that the creativity gets sucked out because, like your most important asset to your band director is can you read the parts so you can go to like solo and ensemble contest
Right.
or something, right? So I hear you.
You know where you can see that? The black church. And people were like, this might be controversial, but
Come on, bring it on,
but
man.
the black church has some of the best musicians that have ever walked the planet Earth. Not all of them can read music, but the creativity of rhythm, the creativity of chords, the creativity of how these clusters are put together is unbelievable. I heard somebody call it the Black University of America. Because it does teach you how to play. I mean, I grew up honestly, before I ever learned theory, I came up just by listening in church. And um and then what it like kind of then I had to learn what I was hearing. But they're so creative. But like you ask someone to read music and they're like, no, I can't read this. But if you play anything back to them, you give them a chart. I witnessed somebody like, man, we got to play this song at this wedding, put the song to their ears, and then played the whole song by memory within like 3 minutes, you know. And you ask us to like transcribe a song and it takes like, 2 days, So I
Yeah.
think there's some truth, there's something to that.
Yeah, I Sean Jones was on the podcast a number of years ago, and I remember him, saying the exact same thing, like him playing something, and you later realized, oh yeah, this is D flat pentatonic scale, after the fact, but he was just playing what was going on there. A couple things in pivoting here. You just came back from Europe.
Mhm.
Who was that with? Where'd you go?
So I went to France. There's this program called The Bridge, and it's cool. It's super cool. It's like they bridge a lot of these French musicians and American, um, more specifically from Chicago. So it's like all free improvised music. And so like you have so they part of it is like you go over there. So it's like a couple years. So the first installment was American musicians they make these bands. And so we went to France and we toured all of France, like more southern France. So we went to Nimes, Avignon, Tours. The most north was probably Paris, and went all through France. And then next year, the French musicians will come to Chicago and we'll tour like the Midwest. Um, and so
Good luck finding them bread.
yeah, well, they have a grant, thankfully.
No, I meant bread to eat.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
especially that's not going to destroy, that has all this gluten.
yeah.
Well, good luck.
I digress. Go ahead, man. Go ahead.
But it's super cool. I mean, it was like all improvised music. I mean, you weren't playing. I mean, the most tune we'll play is just like during the soundtrack, just to play a tune. But it was super cool because like learning I mean, it's my first time in Europe, but also just learning how they speak that language is different. Chicago comes from like a very like intensity and very blues oriented, way of kind of playing that. And they're coming kind of from like a different vein of like this classical, very sound bass, I mean, like some of the most creative sounds, like, man, where did that sound come from? Like, I don't,
So excuse me, so these cats are playing, like, alongside you?
yeah. So It was
Okay.
like
All right.
it was in our band. It was two French musicians, Nikolai, and for some reason I'm blanking on the piano player. Incredible. And then on the American side, it was myself, Christian Dillingham, and Jeff Albert. And so created a band. And people, obviously, I knew Christian, but outside of that, no one knew each other. And it was like actually kind of amazing. And getting the chance to, you don't really get to play that music for 2 weeks straight. Usually it's
Right.
like a
Right.
one off here and there.
Right. Is there an audience for it over there?
It is. It's like
Yeah.
packed everywhere. There wasn't a single gig that was like, oh, it's like, and that's the incredible part, actually. That was the most shocking part was like at every gig, they were sitting there and they're attentive. I mean, they want an encores. And it's like, I remember we were laughing because there was like a date at one of them. And they're just like like cuddling at like this most like complicated, at some point, like there's like multiphonics going on and like drums is like bashing the cymbal. And she's just like holding on to him. And it's like, and they're like, this is the most romantic thing to do.
Well, that's great, man. That's powerful, man.
But
Wow.
it's really amazing to watch.
That's cool. And they'll be over here next
I
year?
think so. And next year, I think in November.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. All right. So what's happening with this quartet? Are you going to record another album with this quartet?
Yeah. So I'm gonna start. I already have like kind of like some sketches. We did a residency earlier in the year in July, and I wrote some new music for that. And so I'm writing some more music. I don't know when we're gonna do it. Life has shifted in my life a little bit, so we'll see how I navigate, wedding planning and doing a record.
Yeah, well, let's jump in that, man. I saw on Instagram, you obviously proposing. So
Yeah. Thank
congratulations,
you.
man. That's great. When are you getting married?
We don't know yet. I think well, August, probably like late August. Like
Okay.
keep it. We wanted fall, but Chicago. We funny. We picked a day, and then like 2 days later, it's a snowstorm in Chicago.
Yeah.
You're like, so maybe let's avoid November.
But if you waited to November, man, you could have the French cats play the reception,
Yeah, I'm sure everybody would love that.
Well, cool.
Yeah,
Leonard, man, good to see you. Thank you for your
of
time, bro. The
course.
record's phenomenal. New beginnings. We look forward to the next one, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Liner Notes is grateful for the support of Van Doren Reeds and Mouthpieces. Be sure and check out the Van Doren Advisory Studio in New York City for all your sound sculpting needs. Liner Notes is grateful for the support of Arlen's Good Beer in Bowling Green, Ohio.
Engineered by Marco Mendoza. Visit his website at engineeredbymarco.com. The theme music is Hide, Seek, Find from my record Beatitude, out on Tiger Turn.
Produced by David Bixler. Be sure and subscribe to Liner Notes wherever you find your podcasts. If you like what you hear, I ask that you consider supporting Liner Notes financially. You can do this by going to the Liner Notes tab at davidbixler.com. Thank you for your consideration.